told us the area was clear. It wasn't. March 15th, 2004. Our convoy rolled into Ramadi like ghosts entering a graveyard. I was Staff Sergeant Mike Chen, 2nd Battalion, 5th Marines. This part wasn't in the mission briefing, how the silence would crawl under your skin and stay there. The Humvees kicked up dust clouds that hung in the air like smoke from funeral pyres. Through my night vision goggles, the city looked dead. Not abandoned, dead. Buildings stood like broken teeth against the desert sky, their windows dark as empty eye sockets, watching our combat zone entry. "Radio silence from here on out," Lieutenant Morrison's voice crackled through the comms. "We're in enemy territory now." But it wasn't enemy soldiers that made my skin crawl. It was the civilians. They lined the streets like mannequins, staring at our convoy with eyes that reflected nothing. Not fear, not anger, just emptiness. Children stood frozen beside their mothers, not waving, not hiding, just watching. The jungle went silent, except this wasn't jungle. This was urban warfare at its most unnatural presence. No dogs barking, no car engines. Even our diesel rumble seemed swallowed by the buildings themselves. I checked my rifle for the 3rd time in 10 minutes. Magazine loaded, safety off. My hands were steady, but something deep in my gut whispered this recon mission would be different. The coordinates sent from HQ placed us in Sector 7. Locals called it something else entirely. Through the bulletproof glass, I caught sight of graffiti sprawled across a bombed-out storefront. Arabic script I couldn't read, but the locals had translated it once. Lanat Zada, the cursed place. Our gunner, Corporal Williams, lowered his 240 Bravo and turned to me. His face was pale under the desert camo paint. "Sarge, you feel that? Like we're being watched by something that ain't human." I nodded. We all felt it. The fog moved like it was alive, seeping between buildings, following our vehicles like it had intelligence, like it knew we didn't belong here. The radio crackled with static, but no voices, just whispers in the static that sounded almost like calling. Our interpreter, Hassan, pressed close to my window as we dismounted near the forward operating base. His eyes darted between shadows like a man expecting ghosts. "Sergeant," he whispered, his English broken but urgent. "This city, Lanat Zada, you understand? Cursed land. The dead do not leave here." I'd heard the locals mention it before, but Hassan was different. He was former Iraqi army, practical, not superstitious. If he was spooked, there was reason. "What kind of cursed?" I asked, checking my perimeter while the squad established a defensive position. Hassan touched something under his shirt, probably a protective charm. "Soldiers come here. They change. They see things. Hear voices in radio silence when no one transmits. Evil entity lives in these walls." The fog thickened around us, unnatural for the desert heat. Through my scope, I watched windows in nearby buildings, empty frames that should show nothing, but I swore I saw movement, shadows that moved independent of light sources. "Hassan, stay close. We're moving to the extraction point in 10 minutes. He nodded, but muttered something in Arabic that sounded like a prayer. The words seemed to echo off the buildings longer than they should have, creating an unnatural presence in the air itself. My radio hissed with static. For a moment, I thought I heard my name whispered through the interference. But when I keyed the mic, only silence answered back. The mission was just beginning, but I already knew we weren't alone out here. The firefight lasted 20 minutes. When the smoke cleared, we counted 3 insurgent bodies sprawled across the rooftop. Standard urban combat, until Corporal Martinez found the radio. "Sarge, check this out." Martinez held up a handheld radio, its battery compartment empty, wires hanging loose. This thing was transmitting during the fight. I took the device. Cold metal, no power source, but the LED was still flickering green. Active channel. That's impossible, Williams said, wiping blood from a facial cut. Dead battery, dead radio. I keyed the mic anyway. Static answered, then something that made my blood freeze. Voices. Multiple voices, speaking in overlapping English and Arabic. Their words distorted like they were calling from underwater. Permission to enter. Permission to enter. We're still here. Martinez stepped back. Those aren't our call signs, Sarge. Those voices, they sound like ghosts. Williams finished. Hassan appeared at my shoulder, his face pale. Shayateen al-Harb, he whispered. War demons. They speak through dead machines, call to living soldiers. I heard stories. Radios that broadcast voices of dead fighters, trying to lead their brothers into the cursed land. I switched off the radio, but the voices continued for another 30 seconds before fading into silence. Above us, the fog began to move in patterns that defied the wind. December 2004. Night patrol had become a ritual of fear. I was positioned on overwatch, my thermal scope scanning rooftops across the combat zone. The technology was supposed to show heat signatures, living, breathing targets. It had never lied to me before. That's why what I saw next still haunts my war trauma 30 years later. Contact, 2 o'clock. I radioed to my squad below. Through the scope, clear as day, 2 figures moved across a rooftop 200 meters out, human-shaped, walking in formation like soldiers on patrol. I don't see anything, came back from Williams, scanning the same building through his own optics. I adjusted focus, zoomed in. The figures were there, moving with military precision. One raised his arm, a hand signal I recognized. Enemy forces advancing. Take the shot. Lieutenant Morrison's voice crackled through comms. I centered the crosshairs on the lead figure, controlled my breathing, squeezed the trigger. The muzzle flash lit up the night. Through the scope, I watched the figure stumble, fall. Target down, I reported. But when our squad reached the rooftop 5 minutes later, nothing was there. No body, no blood, no shell casing from my shot, just empty concrete and wind. Sarge, Martinez whispered, look at this. Boot prints in the dust. Military-issue prints that formed a perfect patrol pattern across the roof, but they just stopped, mid-stride, like whoever made them had simply vanished into thin air. The thermal scope had shown heat signatures where none existed, bodies that moved but cast no shadows, an unnatural presence that left physical evidence but no physical form. Hassan translated graffiti on the wall. They march eternal. January 2005. The thing about hallucination or reality is you never know which you're experiencing until it's too late. Williams was on point when he opened fire. Full auto burst from his M4, muzzle flashes strobing in the pre-dawn darkness. The sound echoed between buildings like thunder trapped in a canyon. Contact front, he screamed into his radio. Shadow moving, human-sized, advancing on our position. I rushed to his position, weapon raised. Through my night vision, I saw him tracking something with his rifle, firing controlled bursts at a target I couldn't see. Where? I shouted over the gunfire. Right there, 10 meters, moving left to right. But my NVGS showed nothing. Empty street, abandoned vehicles, drifting fog, no muzzle flashes returning fire, no movement except Williams himself, pivoting like he was tracking an invisible enemy. Cease fire! Cease fire! I grabbed his barrel, forcing it down. Williams stared at me, pupils dilated with adrenaline and something deeper, something like recognition of the supernatural force he'd been fighting. I saw him, Sarge, clear as day, insurgent in black, AK-47, moving to flank us. I put 6 rounds center mass. He went down hard. We searched the area. No blood trails, no shell casings from enemy weapons. But in the dust where Williams swore the figure fell, we found something that made my skin crawl. Footprints, boot impressions that ended in a spray pattern, like someone had been hit by gunfire and fallen backward. But no body, no blood, just whispering whispers in the wind that sounded like Arabic prayers for the dead. The locals had a name for what Williams saw: Shayatin al-Harb, war demons that feed on combat trauma and guilt. The memory hit me during the quiet hours before dawn. Not a flashback, something softer. A moment of peace that felt foreign in this cursed land. I was 17 again, sitting on my dad's porch in Oregon. Rain tapping on the roof, coffee steam rising from the mug in my hands. My younger sister reading a book beside me, completely safe in her own world. No radio chatter, no weapon maintenance, no scanning for threats. Just silence that meant peace instead of danger. "You thinking about home, Sarge?" Martinez asked, noticing me staring into the distance. "Yeah, strange how quiet used to feel safe." In Oregon, silence meant everything was okay. Here in Ramadi, silence meant something was watching, something was waiting. The fog that moved without wind, the voices in dead radios, the shadows that walked but cast no heat signatures. I thought I was losing my mind some nights, remembering what normal felt like. Back home, shadows stayed attached to objects that cast them. Radios only worked with batteries. Children played instead of staring with empty eyes. "War trauma does weird things to your memory," Martinez said, cleaning his rifle in mechanical motions. "Makes home feel like a dream." But it wasn't trauma making me question reality. It was this place itself, this Lanat Zada that Hassan kept warning us about. A cursed land where the rules of physics bent around the weight of too much death. The radio crackled with static, and for just a moment, I swore I heard my sister's voice calling my name through the interference. February 2005. Some buildings just radiate wrongness. The house on Haifa Street stood like a broken tooth among the rubble. 3 stories of scarred concrete and shattered glass, unremarkable, except for one detail that made every Marine in our platoon avoid it like plague. "Nobody sleeps in that house," Corporal Davis told me as we established our forward operating position. Word came down from the guys we relieved. "That building, it breaks men." I studied the structure through my binoculars. Standard Iraqi architecture, damaged by explosives but still structurally sound, perfect for an overwatch position. Tactically, it was ideal. Psychologically, it felt like staring into an open grave. "What happened to the last squad that used it?" I asked. Davis lit a cigarette with shaky voice-shaking fingers. 3 Marines went in for overnight recon. Only 2 came out. The third, Peterson, they found him in the basement the next morning. Catatonic. Kept repeating the same phrase in Arabic. What phrase? Lanat Zada. The curse has claimed another. Through the scope, I noticed something odd about the windows. They reflected light wrong, like the glass was bent, or the space inside was somehow deeper than it should be. Shadows moved behind the frames even though our thermal imaging showed no heat signatures. Hassan appeared beside me, following my gaze to the building. His face went pale. "You must not enter there, Sergeant. That is where the whispers in the static grow loudest. Where dead soldiers call to the living, trying to make them join the supernatural force that guards this cursed land." The radio on my belt hissed with interference, and I swore I heard footsteps echoing from inside the empty building, 200 meters away. Against every instinct, we entered the house. Military protocol demanded we clear every room, check every corner. The mission parameters were specific. Establish overwatch, monitor enemy movement, maintain radio contact with base. What the parameters didn't mention was how the darkness inside would feel alive. Our flashlights cut through shadow thick as smoke. The air tasted metallic, like blood mixed with cordite. Each step on the debris-covered floor echoed longer than it should have, as if the sound was being carried through hidden passages in the walls. "First floor clear," Williams reported, his voice tight with tension. "Moving to second level." That's when the door started slamming. Bang! The sound came from behind us. A door we'd already checked, swinging shut with violent force. Then another. Bang! Bang! Like someone was following our patrol route, sealing off our escape routes one by one. "Contact?" I called out, weapon raised. "Negative. No movement visible." But the footsteps were undeniable now. Running footsteps on the floor above us. Heavy boots moving in military formation. Back and forth, like soldiers pacing a guard post. Martinez keyed his radio. "Base, this is Recon 7. We're hearing movement inside the structure, but thermal shows negative on human signatures. Requesting guidance." Static answered. Then, through the interference, a voice that made every Marine freeze in place. "Permission to enter. Permission to enter. We're already here." The voice was speaking English, but with an accent none of us recognized. Not Iraqi, not American. Something older. Something that had been calling through these walls long before our war brought us to this haunted village. Above us, the footsteps stopped. The silence was somehow worse than the noise. The motion sensors we'd placed throughout the house went off every 20 minutes like clockwork. The electronic chirping would echo through the empty rooms, indicating movement where none should exist. We'd trained ourselves to respond immediately. Weapons ready, flashlights sweeping, coordinated room clearing procedures. Every sweep turned up nothing. "Sarge, this is the 15th trigger in 4 hours," Martinez reported, exhaustion creeping into his voice. "Whatever's setting these off, it's not showing up on any of our equipment." I checked the sensor readings on my handheld display. The devices were functioning perfectly, registering motion at different locations throughout the building. Heat triggered, motion activated, impossible to fool with conventional tactics. But they were detecting something that didn't exist, or something that existed in a way our instruments couldn't properly measure. "Could be electrical interference," Williams suggested, but his voice lacked conviction. "Old wiring, damaged circuits." Another sensor triggered, this time from the basement. We'd sealed the basement, locked door, no other entrances, completely secure. But the readings showed continuous movement down there, like someone pacing back and forth in a space we knew was empty. Hassan's words echoed in my memory. That house broke men. Now I understood why Peterson had been found catatonic, repeating Arabic phrases about curses. The building itself was alive with some unnatural presence that existed just beyond the edge of our perception. The radio crackled, and through the static we heard what sounded like multiple voices in unison. "Join us. Join us. The war never ends here." April 2005. After the airstrike, the world became a hellscape of smoke and settling dust. We'd called in close air support on a confirmed insurgent position, a factory complex where enemy forces had been staging attacks on our patrol routes. The F-16s did their job with precision ordnance, turning concrete into powder and steel into twisted sculpture. But what I saw walking through that smoke still makes me question everything I thought I knew about death. "Good hit," Lieutenant Morrison radioed to the pilots. "Target neutralized. Moving in to confirm." Through the thermal scope on my rifle, the devastation looked complete. No heat signatures, no movement. Just the fading thermal glow of destroyed equipment and settling debris. That's when Williams grabbed my arm. "Sarge, you see that?" I followed his pointing finger into the smoke cloud. At first, nothing. Then, like a photograph developing in slow motion, I saw him, a figure, walking upright through the destruction. No head, just shoulders, torso, arms swinging in a natural gait, moving through smoke thick enough to choke a man. Where his head should have been was just empty space. "Take him down," I ordered. Williams centered his crosshairs and fired. The figure didn't react to the gunshot, didn't stumble or fall or acknowledge the bullet impact, just kept walking in that measured, purposeful stride. "I hit him center mass," Williams whispered. No reaction. The headless figure continued moving until the smoke swallowed him completely. When the air cleared 5 minutes later, our sweep of the area found no survivors, no footprints, no blood trail, just the lingering smell of something that wasn't quite human, mixed with the cordite and dust. June 2005. The dead don't always stay buried in a combat zone. We were pinned down by sniper fire from a building complex 2 blocks east. Standard urban warfare scenario. Advance under cover, suppress the enemy, call for support. Textbook Marine Corps tactics. What wasn't textbook was seeing Lance Corporal Johnson waving us forward from a rooftop position. Johnson had been killed 3 weeks earlier by an IED on patrol. I'd personally zipped his body bag. I'd written the casualty report. I'd watched his transport leave for Dover Air Force Base. But there he was, clear as day, using hand signals to direct our movement. "You seeing this?" Martinez whispered, his voice tight with disbelief. Through my scope, Johnson looked exactly as he had in life. Desert camo, full battle gear, M4 rifle slung across his chest. He was pointing toward a flanking route that would put us behind the sniper's position. Tactically sound advice from a Marine who knew the terrain. "That's impossible," Williams muttered. "Johnson's dead." We all saw him die, but the figure kept signaling, urgent gestures indicating enemy positions we couldn't see from our current location. Military hand signals every Marine recognizes. Movements that could only come from extensive combat training. I made the call to follow his lead. The flanking maneuver worked perfectly. We eliminated the sniper threat and secured the objective. When I looked back to acknowledge Johnson's assistance, the rooftop was empty. No heat signature on thermal, no footprints in the dust, no evidence anyone had ever been there. But the tactical success was real. The dead Marine had guided us through a perfect military operation from beyond the grave. They called it stress when we got back stateside. Combat fatigue, post-traumatic stress disorder, hallucination brought on by extended deployment in a high-threat environment. The military psychologists had explanations for everything we'd experienced. Shared delusions caused by group pressure and sleep deprivation. Auditory hallucinations triggered by constant hypervigilance. Visual distortions caused by equipment malfunction and environmental factors. They weren't there. They didn't feel the unnatural presence that followed our patrol routes. They didn't hear the whispers in the static when radios transmitted with no power source. They didn't see the shadows that walked independent of the objects that cast them. The official reports sanitized everything. Psychological trauma manifesting as paranormal encounters, stress-induced group hallucinations consistent with extended combat deployment. No evidence of supernatural activity in operational theater. Clean, clinical, complete bullshit. What they couldn't explain was how our hallucinations provided accurate tactical intelligence, how Johnson's ghost had guided us to successful mission completion, how the voices in dead radios warned us about ambush points before we walked into them. The historians want to file our experiences under war stories and combat mythology. They want to reduce the terror we lived through into psychological case studies and academic footnotes. But I know what we encountered in that cursed land. Evil entities that exist in the spaces between life and death, feeding on the violence and trauma that soaks into the very soil of battle zones. The war ended for everyone else. For us, it never stopped. We brought pieces of Lanat Zada home in our memories, and they're still calling to us.
March 2006. Sometimes the dead refuse to let go of their radio frequencies. We were conducting final patrol sweeps before the unit rotation back to the States. Standard procedure: hand over operational control to the incoming Marines, brief them on local threats, pack our gear for extraction point processing. What wasn't standard was receiving radio communications from Marines who'd been killed in action weeks earlier. Recon 7, this is Recon 2, requesting immediate assistance. We're pinned down in Sector 4, taking heavy casualties. I recognized the voice immediately. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, killed by sniper fire on February 15th. I'd been at his memorial service. I'd helped carry his flag-draped coffin to the transport aircraft, but his voice was coming through our radio, clear and urgent, using proper call signs and requesting backup for a firefight that couldn't be happening. "Rodriguez is dead," Martinez whispered, his face pale. "We buried him last month." I keyed the mic anyway. "Recon 2, confirm your position. What's your current status?" Static answered, then Rodriguez's voice again. "Grid coordinates 32S TB 84,159, 23,456. We're trapped in a building, enemy forces on all sides. Need immediate extraction." Those coordinates placed him in an area we'd cleared 3 times. Empty buildings, no enemy activity, no American forces deployed. Williams checked his equipment. "Radio's working fine, Sarge. Signals coming through military frequencies, proper encryption, correct authentication codes." More voices joined Rodriguez. Marines I recognized from our extended deployment. Corporal Peterson, the Marine who'd gone catatonic in the haunted house. Lance Corporal Johnson, who'd guided us through the sniper attack while dead. Private First Class Williams from Alpha Company, killed by an IED on Christmas Eve. All of them calling for help that we couldn't provide, from positions that didn't exist, in a war that had ended for them months ago. Our interpreter found me during the pre-dawn hours, shaking like a man who'd seen his own death approaching. "Sergeant Chen," Hassan whispered, his English more broken than usual with fear. "The voices on the radio, they are calling specifically for you now." I'd noticed it too. The dead Marines had started using my name during their phantom distress calls. Not my rank or call sign, my actual name, spoken with familiarity that suggested they knew me personally in whatever realm they now inhabited. "Hassan, what exactly is Lanat Zada? Tell me everything." He lit a cigarette with trembling fingers, eyes scanning the pre-dawn darkness as if expecting something to emerge from the shadows. "This land, it has drunk too much blood over many centuries. Ottoman soldiers, British troops, Iraqi army, American Marines. All who die here violently, their spirits cannot leave. They become trapped in the cursed land, calling to their brothers who still live. The radio on my belt crackled with static, and Rodriguez's voice emerged from the interference. Chen, we need you here. The mission isn't complete. You have to join us." Hassan grabbed my arm. "You understand now? They want you with them, the dead soldiers. They are lonely in their eternal war. They call to you because they remember brotherhood, and they want their brothers beside them in the place where war never ends." "How do I stop it?" "You cannot stop it. You can only leave this cursed land and hope the voices do not follow you across the ocean." But we both knew it was too late for hope. The unnatural presence had already attached itself to our unit, to our memories, to our souls. September 2006. We left Ramadi, but Ramadi never left us. The extraction went smoothly. Birds lifted us out of the combat zone. Transport aircraft carried us to Kuwait. Civilian airliner brought us home to Camp Pendleton. Standard military procedure for unit rotation. What wasn't standard was how the voices followed us. Even now, 20 years later, I still hear them calling through radio static. Rodriguez requesting backup, Johnson providing tactical guidance, Peterson repeating Arabic phrases about cursed lands that claim soldiers' souls. My civilian radio picks up their transmissions during thunderstorms. My car stereo occasionally broadcasts their desperate calls for assistance. Late at night, when the house is quiet, I hear them whispering my name through the baby monitor in my daughter's room. The war trauma counselors say it's psychological, survivor's guilt manifesting as auditory hallucinations, post-traumatic stress creating elaborate fantasy scenarios to cope with the reality of losing brothers in combat. They're wrong. What we encountered in Lanat Zada was real, an evil entity that feeds on violence and binds fallen warriors to the land where they died. A supernatural force that transcends death and reaches across continents to call its chosen soldiers home. I thought I was losing my mind until I received a letter last week from Martinez, from Williams, from every surviving member of our unit. They're all hearing the voices too, all receiving the same phantom radio calls. The dead Marines are patient. They know we'll answer eventually. After all, no Marine leaves a brother behind. If you've heard stories like this, or served near something you can't explain, let us know in the comments. Subscribe for more declassified nightmares.